Hi, I'm Kimberly.
And I'm Jocelyn.
From Fat Quarter Shop.
And it's So Emma.
And we're here today to talk about the Deck-ade the Halls Quilt Along. 10 fabrics, 10 blocks, 10 years. And today we're on Holiday Homecoming Wreath block. And so we're going to talk today about this block. So Jocelyn, tell me your inspiration for these blocks right here.
Well, this block is called our Holiday Homecoming block, and it's a group of 3 wreaths. Really, it's pretty simple. You're starting out with a little snowball block in the center and moving out to form a larger ring around it. And there's nothing as inviting as a wreath on a door when you're going to someone's house for the holidays. So that's why we've included it. We've added in these adorable little bows to accent the wreaths, but besides that, it's just going to be your plain focal fabric, whatever you choose. So here we've got 2 greens and 1 blue. You can mix it up with whatever fabrics you're working with. I do want to add, we're seeing on our Flickr group, you guys are doing some wonderful blocks, keep adding them. And yeah, we're looking through them every day. So thanks.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. And today I want to talk about the different techniques that we're going to do. This is the most simple block out of the entire quilt. All we're going to be doing are corner triangles. So every single triangle is just a plain corner triangle. So it's very, very simple. So let's get to sewing. So I want to remind everybody, you can download the Holiday Homecoming PDF for free on our website or our blog. So make sure you do that for the instructions. And the first step that we're going to do is we're going to do the top of the wreath and the bottom of the wreath. So we're going to be doing these 2 rectangles and this bottom rectangle, and I'm going to show you how you do your corner square triangles. So if you open your instructions to page 3, we're going to be doing everything on the left column first. So what I like to do is I like to mark everything and pin it and then take it to the sewing machine because it makes everything much easier. So we're going to be marking on the back of 2 fabric beads right in the center on the wrong sides. And I like to use this purple marking pen. It's my favorite marking pen. And you can see you're going to put 1 on this edge and you're going to put 1 on this edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pin this so that when you go to your sewing machine you don't have to think. You don't even need your instructions. And then we're going to go ahead and do the bottom of the wreath by taking a fabric D rectangle, and we're going to put 2 fabric B squares on the bottom. And we're going to just place these on the bottom and pin. And we're going to do this for each wreath so that you have 3 of these. So we're going to go ahead and sew, and all we're going to do is be sewing the lines from start to finish on our machine. So let's go sew. Okay, so now I've just laid my pieces on my sewing machine table, and we're just going to sew directly right on the line. And I'm going to sew with a 2.0 stitch length, and you do not need to backstitch to secure your seam. You're just going to sew. And I'm going to chain piece by just going ahead and doing the next piece. So now we've sewn our lines, and what we're going to do is I just use scissors to cut behind the seam approximately 1/4 inch. And so we're going to press these open, and then we're going to go to our next step. So now we're going to talk about how you make your bow block for your wreath blocks. So your bow block includes this entire section, and that is 2 flying geeses that face a 3 patch. So we're going to talk about how you make all of that. So the first thing you're going to do is take 2 fabric J rectangles for each wreath block. You're going to take 4 fabric H squares and draw a line on the back from center to center like we've already done and we did in the previous step. We're going to put 1 on each corner. And we're going to go to the sewing machine and sew from the line to the line. But we're also going to sew the center 3 patch, which is 2 fabric I rectangles and 1 fabric K rectangle, and we're going to sew these together. So I'm going to go ahead and just pin 1. So now we are going to just go ahead and do the same thing we did in our previous step. We're going to just cut off, put our scraps in our jar. We're going to set our seams. Sometimes I stack them together. Make sure they're flat and then press open. On this one, I'm going to also set my seam one at a time. So I'm going to set it here. The instructions say to press in towards the red. Press in. Now I'm going to set this seam and then press into the red. So now we took the next step. We put our square and we sewed. We're going to cut, press open, and sew those together. So now we have our 2 flying geese. You want to make sure your center point faces the center. And we're going to sew all 3 sections together. So the first thing I'm going to do before I go to my sewing machine is I'm going to pin 1 section together so that when you get to your sewing machine, it's lined up correctly, and I pin twice, once at the beginning and once at the end, and we're going to go sew. So now we're going to just sew with a 1/4 inch. I'm using a 1/4 inch foot that has a guide so it really presses the fabric up. I'm going to press this open, and you can see that the point matches perfectly. I'm going to just kind of finger press, and I'm going to make sure my point is in the center, and I'm going to pin this also. So now we're going to do 2 steps in one. I love to do 2 steps at once, so when you go to your sewing machine, you're not wasting any time. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do this row right here. We already made these 2 blocks at the very beginning, and we made our blow block. So we are going to just pin those together before we go to the sewing machine. So I have them laid out, and we're going to just pin the first piece, and then I'm going to kind of just flip this open, and I'm going to pin this one also. And that way when I get to my sewing machine, there's no thinking involved. You just sew a straight 1/4 inch. Very unlikely to make a mistake since you have pinned it on your table. That's the first step. The second step is we're going to make a snowball block with our fabric A square and 4 fabric G squares. I've already drawn my line with my purple pen, my favorite pen, and what I do is I'm going to put 1 square on each corner before I go to my sewing machine, and I'm going to pin it in place again so that when I get to my sewing machine there's no thinking involved. All you have to do is sew. Now we've sewn our 1/4 inch on our top row and our snowball corner squares. So again, what I'm going to do is just cut these off at approximately a 1/4 inch. Use nice sharp scissors, and again I'm going to throw these in my little jar. And on this I'm going to set the seams all at one time. They're nice and flat, and then I'm just going to press open. And then on these, the same thing, I'm going to set my seam each time. I'll set my seam, press open gently, set my seam, and press open gently. Okay, so this is our top row. This is our center row. What we're going to want to do is sew the 2 letter E rectangles to the edge of the center snowball block. Sew a 1/4 inch, press open. We're going to go ahead and do that and talk about how we assemble the wreath block next. We've assembled all the parts of our wreath block, and as you can tell, this is the simplest block in this row along. So now we have our top, middle, and bottom sections, and I'm going to show you how you assemble those together. I've laid them out so that we know they're going the right direction, and again, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pin before we go to the sewing machine. So I'm going to pull this one over, and since this is a long seam, I'm going to pin at the beginning, the end, and also the middle. And then I'm going to just go ahead and pull this one over and pin this one the same way. Okay, so now we have our block, and we're going to go ahead and start sewing at the end and go all the way down. And I put this grab it here right on the bed of my machine because then I can just put my pins there. Makes it very quick, and I have two of these. I always have one on my sewing machine and one on the cutting mat so that I can get to pins at any point. And again, I stop before I pull my pin out. You never want to sew over a pin. Then you might not have a sewing machine to work on for a while. So now I've sewn my wreath block, and I always use starch at the end when I have my block done. And what I do is I put a very heavy coating of starch when it's all the way together. I use a starch that says no flaking, no dark colors. I let this sit here about 30 seconds to a minute so that it can really soak in, and then I press. So we've waited a little bit, and we're just going to press. And it's just going to give it a little bit of weight. And then I will press once again when I have my entire row together. So now you can see we've made one block. You're going to go ahead and you're going to repeat the same exact instructions to make your other two blocks. And this is very simple. You've got your block right here. You're going to put two fabric C rectangles in between your blocks, sew them together. And then there's also a side rectangle on the end that you're going to need to assemble this together. So thanks for joining us today to talk about our wreath blocks. We wanted to show you how this looks on the quilt. And you can see we went ahead and made one with a different wreath on the bottom, so you can just see you can get the same effect with a different fabric. And thanks for joining us, and join us in 2 weeks when we talk about our Trim the Tree block. Thank you.